Yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Nicola, I'm 20 years old and I'm a politics and international relations student at the University of Manchester.
Okay, cool. Okay, Coram, what is Islamophobia?
Islamophobia basically is the singling out of people who follow the faith of Islam, Muslims, and basically being negative towards them. So just to use a comparison, the term being anti-Semitic, being anti-Semite, that means being negative towards people of the religion of Judaism. So you're being negative towards them not because of race but because of their religion. So Islamophobia is basically that.
Okay, thank you. Do you think there is a conflict between Islam and Britain?
Honestly, not at all. If we are viewing Islam in terms of the moderate, correct way of practicing it, there isn't a problem, in my opinion. What there is a problem with is Islamism, extreme Islam, militant Islam, not only in Britain, but you could argue the world in terms of terrorism attacks, for example, the most prominent ones being 9/11 and 7/7, also the Madrid bombings. So, not in terms of the true depiction of Islam and Muslims. No, there is not a problem between Islam and Britain. But there is a problem is the extremist element. That's the real issue, and I really feel passionate about a difference being made between those two.
Okay. How do you think? Okay, this question is not on the sheet, but how do you think is the Muslim community bonds with the general British community?
Okay, that's something I really feel strongly about. Also, do I feel there is a degree of integration that I'd be happy with? Not personally. There is integration. I think it's widely accepted that the second and now third generations of, say for example, the Pakistani community are embedded in our society. I happen to be the first generation Pakistani. What could be done? I'm not really sure. Is there a problem? Not so much as in it's. Is there a problem in terms of it being integrated? Yes, to an extent. But that's geography and relate to economics, for example. If you see where people live, you'll notice the correlation with the poorest areas being home to ethnic minorities. I study politics, just an example. In social policy, the two poorest ethnic groups are the Bangladeshi and Pakistani communities in the UK, and where do they happen to live? In inner city areas and in the less prosperous areas. So that is an obstacle for integration also. So yeah, that is a problem. To what extent it could be argued, it depends on your opinion, really.
Okay, what measures do you think could be taken to resolve those problems?
That's an extremely difficult question, but to answer it, better community relations first and foremost. By that I mean community in terms of race and religion. So we need better integration, and that's going to happen through community relations. By that I mean community leaders, so your religious leaders, your political leaders, really fostering a sense of togetherness and interdependency. How that could actually happen, I don't know. An example to be used could be, for example, on religious holidays, inviting members of other faiths to your place of prayer, so the mosque, the synagogue, the church. That is an example of community interdependence that could be used more widely. Again, just fostering the sense of togetherness. That's all I could really suggest for that. So.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Do you believe that the terrorism laws have affected any minorities unfairly?
Again, that's a sensitive issue. I'm not familiar with all the terrorism laws, but one that's really appropriate is the use of stop and search. That has been increased, and it's openly stated that stop and search in relation to anti-terror is focused on people of an Asian background or an Arabic background, or people who are presumed to be Muslims. Now, what does that foster? It fosters resentment, it fosters and fuels tension, and again the lack of trust between people of that community, predominantly the Muslim Asian community in Britain, and the police force. So instead of fostering a good relationship which is needed, it negates that to an extent. Whether something could be done to explain why that is the case, i.e. people are being stopped because in that area, for example, the demographic is really high in terms of a Pakistani Muslim population, for example. Consequently, you're going to have higher stop and searches for people who are brown, people who are Muslim and are from that background. And a simple explanation like that could, save the trouble. Whether it's going to happen, who knows? That's hopefully answers that.
Okay, do you think it's justified that the authorities placing these new laws, are they just? Especially singling out certain racial groups.
To an extent, I think we can all accept that in terms of terrorism, the biggest threat happens to be that fundamental extremist Islamist wing. That is the main threat in terms of terror. Are they just? I think it's fair to say the majority of them, and especially the plans to hide the number of days of detention to over 40, I believe, that does infringe on our civil liberties. Whether we want to go back on our civil liberties for the sake of being safer, whether that is the threat that will lead us to not be safe, is again, who knows. Personally, I do think they infringe on civil liberties. Also, I would go as far to say they are unjust to a degree. To a degree being the important word.
Okay, final question. What role do you feel the media is playing in escalating the conflict or resolving the conflict?
I'm of the opinion that the media plays an extremely important role in the way communities are perceived and the way certain members of those communities are perceived. Unfortunately, in my opinion, in terms of the Muslim community, and especially the British Asian community, a narrative has been created where British Muslims are being portrayed as the boogeymen, the others, the people who don't wish to integrate, the people who are different in a bad way. Why is this the case? You could be cynical and say, it's been allowed to foster because of terrorism law, for example. It's better if you have a section of society cornered in and focused anti-terror laws, for example, in relation to them. Just going back to the main body of the question, yes, I do think the media play a massive role, and if I'm being honest, in terms of the British Muslim population, that is a negative role. Whether that can be stilled is another question entirely. I'm on the opinion that the Muslim population in England need to take steps by themselves to negate that, and one of them could be, as I suggested earlier, is foster this notion of interdependence and community. So an example of that could be inviting religious leaders to your place of prayer, for example. Whether that's relevant and how well that would do is another thing completely, but that is an example of how that could be dealt with.
Okay, thanks for your time, Karam. Okay.
No problem, thanks.